Welcome to the European Summit, the industry's leading event that brings together the whole affiliate marketing ecosystem. You are watching stage 2, and this is Smart Content Strategies for Maximum Results with, and I don't want to mess this up, Jochen. Welcome, Jochen.
Hi there, Romana. Well done.
Over to you. Thanks a million.
Yeah, thank you, Romana. Thank you, and hello, everybody. I think we should see my presentation now. I can ask there we go. Okay, yeah, welcome, everybody. My name is Jochen from TEXTBROKER, and give you a quick introduction of who we are. So TEXTBROKER is one of the largest global content marketplaces. With us, you can order texts you need for your website, you can get translations, and you can get more help on anything around content marketing. We've produced over 12 million articles over the past 10, 15 years, and we add another about 100,000 every month in 36 languages. And we do this with a crowd of over 300,000 registered freelancers worldwide. So this should give us good overviews about what's going on in the world of content marketing. And that's what I want to dig a bit deeper into in today's presentation. Concretely, what I'd like to do is I would like to show you more about the evolution of content, because a lot has happened, certainly since I joined TEXTBROKER in 2012. A lot has happened in the Google algorithm, a lot has happened in the world of content. And interestingly enough, we can see and follow these developments quite closely when we look at how TEXTBROKER has developed. In the second part, I want to show you how you can use data that's available for everybody to determine content needs that you have for your own website and that you need to look at when you want to perform better. And then I'll add some other tips for smart content projects as we go into the third part. So with that said, the content needs have developed over the last about 10 years. And back then, back in the 2010, 2011 and before, Google was able to measure the quantity of content that is on your website. Whether it's good content or bad content, that didn't really matter. Google only looked at how many articles do you have on your site, how many links do you have that direct to your site. And the more you had, the more or the higher Google would rank your website. And then in 2012, around 2012, that changed, and Google was able to more and more also measure quality of content through different parts of the algorithm, which made the qualitative part much more important. And by today, this is the dominating part. So only having a lot of content on your website doesn't help. You need it in the right quality, and you need to think about your audience, your readers, and actually write the content for those people and not for the search engine anymore. And concretely, here are a few of the updates that Google made to the algorithms, quite often named with some animals like pandas or penguins or pigeons, etc. And as we all know, Google is constantly updating their ranking algorithm. Nobody really knows the entirety of it except Google themselves. But what we do know is that whole change into measuring content quality was a big emphasis. Mobile first, and implementing that mobile first is the strategy to go, was the second big move that they made since 2012. And then obviously anything around web spam. I remember in the early days of TEXTBROKER, the first few years, we wrote articles that nobody would ever publish today anymore. That were even published like, white font on white space, so that only the machine would read them. This is not possible anymore today. This is considered web spam and will certainly result in penalties of your website. Now, if I look at TEXTBROKER in these about 10 years, then first of all, we can see the number of clients that needed content and the number of clients that asked us to help them producing content has increased. Whereas when I look at the number of words per article that they ordered, that also increased, but we have that little ditch there where you can see the question mark in around 2013. And the question is, why is there a ditch? Why is the number of articles, the number of words per article first going down before then people started ordering more? I think that the explanation somewhere sits in this slide. And if you look at it, there was a kind of a first shock wave when Google, when everybody found out that they cannot move on as they did in the years before. And many people first tried. So in the first month after these big updates, they kept going as they are. You can see the trend is kind of going on as it was before. And then you see this little ditch, which kind of looked like people saying, let's pay more for each word that gets written, but let's try to order less words. Let's try to have shorter articles, make them a little bit better than before. So in other words, they try to keep the costs for them as they were before. But that pretty soon changed again, and now everybody realizes that in order to be successful with your website, in order to be successful in rankings, you need more words per article, and you need to pay more per word, because that lets you stay visible and generate conversions. So in these 10 years, you can see there's a factor of about 1.5 to 2 that the number of words increased, and a factor of 2 to 2.5 with which the price per word increased. So a clear shift towards more quality, towards longer articles, and that is exactly what Google was intending when they made all their changes to the algorithm. Here's another example, and I'm comparing here 2 clients, obviously anonymously, but these are 2 different companies, both of which have been big text broker clients, one in 2012 and one in 2020. And both these companies had the same goal. Their goal and their business was to bring small and medium enterprises into the internet. So to make sure they have websites, and then to make sure that these websites get seen and get rankings. But the way they ordered from TextBroker completely changed in those different years. So in 2012, that company ordered 36,000 texts in 1 year. And on average, each of these texts had 77 words. They ordered it in the lowest quality level that we have. They used self-service, which is, almost nobody from TextBroker being involved in this process. And yet they also only had less than 1 person from our team involved in this. In 2020, again, a different company with the same goal of their business, they ordered 14,000 articles, which is less than half of what the other company had 8 years before. Yet the number of words increased by around factor 9. And the quality level was the highest that we offer, which is like 4 to 5 stars. Our categorization is in stars there. Also, they used managed service, which means that we managed the process for them, that we had an editorial team look at each article. And as a consequence, 8 of our people were permanently involved with this project. So this is another example showing what happened in the world of content in the last 9-10 years. And how the behavior of TextBroker clients has changed. Now, if we now look at what this all means and how would you plan your content needs and your content projects, then the way to explain this best, I think, is by making clear that there are 2 parts that are forming a good content briefing. Obviously, the content briefing, especially when you outsource the creation of content, is the most important piece you need to consider, because that tells the person that writes your content what he or she should do. And there is, on the right-hand side, a subjective part to each briefing, which is the things like style, like brand voice, and language that people should use. This is subjective. You can, as a company, determine how you would like to do it. And then there's the second part of each briefing, which is data-driven, where you can draw data from tools, from the SEO world, to see what you need to do in order to produce content that converts. And I want to now show you more about that data-driven part and that data part and an approach how you can look at it when you think about your next content that needs to be produced for your own sites. And it starts, and this is a screenshot from a tool called SEMrush. I guess most of you know that. And it shows your site there and then 2 competitors' site and the overlap of keywords that you are ranking for. So you've got this space here where all 3 of these websites are ranking for the same keywords. You would think these are the top keywords in your market. And in most cases, that is definitely the case. but there are also always niches you can look at. Second area is this one here, which is where your site is ranking for these keywords, but your competitors aren't. This is obviously what I would call opportunity keywords, and always worth looking at when seeing if there are niches that you can push further in order to succeed over your competitors. And the third part is this down there, which are keywords that your competitors are ranking for, but you are not. And also there, it needs to be checked in detail, which are these keywords and what is the potential of these keywords for your website, and where does it make sense for you to increase your efforts to also rank for these keywords and kind of move them into the bubble there where all three competitors are ranking. Here's an example of how you could do this, and this is for this middle part where you are ranking already. So this is a company, and that's also a similar screenshot from a real text broker customer that I obviously anonymized. And you can see here in this graph for how many keywords is this company ranking on positions 1 to 5, and for how many on 6 to 10, and so on. And that box there, you can see that there are about 7,800 keywords where this company is ranking on position 21 or higher than that. Now, the good news is there is already a ranking, which means there is a piece of content that Google considers relevant enough to rank. The bad news is it's not ranking where everybody searches, which means page 1, so positions 1 to 10. And the question is, what needs to be done to move these keywords and your rankings up to page 1 and close the gap that currently still exists? And the way to do this is a competitor analysis. So here's an example. On the left-hand side, we have analyzed the article of our customer, which is in that case ranking on position 50. And we've compared it with 2 competitors that are ranking on page 1. And you can see, if you look at these different criteria, and I'll summarize in a second what criteria you should precisely look at, you can see the differences. The easiest one is the number of words. Your keyword ranks with 180 words, and that ranks position 50. And if you look at your competitors, both of them have more than 1,000 words written for the same keyword, for the same user query, which leads Google to rank those articles higher than yours. So the methodology here is, and there's data around for this, to compare the pieces of content that get you to a certain position with the competitors that Google ranked on page 1. Interestingly enough, by the way, these competitors on page 1 do not necessarily need to be those companies that you consider in your normal business as competitors. At the end of the day, Google decides who's a competitor and who isn't by looking at those websites and looking at and trying to answer the question, how relevant is the content on these websites for the intent that the user has when searching for a certain keyword. The second thing you can do, and it is very similar, is to look at that big area on my previous slide of keywords that your competitors are ranking for, but you are not. This is a screenshot from a tool called Ahrefs. And here you can see different competitors and how they rank for different keywords. What is important here to look at is the search volume. Obviously, the higher the search volume is, the more attractive the keyword is. But you need to look at branded versus non-branded terms. So in this case, if Adidas and Nike are the keywords, it will be hard to get on page 1, and certainly will be even harder to get above the actual brands that stand for these names. The third thing to consider is transactional versus informational keywords and content. You always, as I said before, Google is always looking at the user intent. And if the user intent is informational, which means the user wants to inform about something he might want to buy or do later, then the content needs are different than if it is transactional. Transactional means someone is intending to buy something or to take a transaction on the internet, and the search term that he enters is actually reflecting that. At the end of the day, anything you produce needs to be relevant for your audience, for your goals, for your people that you are trying to target. And I'll talk a little later about that as well. And again, with this analysis, you do the same thing as before. You compare the different companies that rank in different positions to try to determine what are the content-related factors that lead Google to rank one side higher than the other. And that, again, gives you the benchmark for your data-driven part of the briefing, and will help you to produce a piece of content that ideally starts ranking higher than that of those competitors, because Google considers it better than theirs. So here are some factors you would want to compare content on. So what type of article is it? If someone writes a high quality advisory article and Google ranks it high, then the probability that a short blog post will get you above that is fairly low. So the type of article is important. The length of the content, as I said before, the structure of the article, the HTML formatting, bullets and lists, etc., because Google also looks at structure in an article. It also looks at how many sub-keywords that are related to your main keyword are used in the article. It looks at relevance and readability. It looks at multi-channel. So is it just a plain text, or do you have images in there, or videos, or have you embedded an infographic? All of that is an important element as well. And then certainly the date of the last content update. And I'll talk about content actuality in a minute. So all these things show you how you can use data that is available and that is out there for everybody to build that data-driven part of your briefing, which then you only have to add the subjective part to. And then that should get you much closer to pieces of content on your website that rank and that are more relevant also in the eyes of Google and certainly in the eyes of your readers. But at the end of the day, the best content in the world won't help you if other parts of your website aren't in order. Things like response time, the right page indexing, the responsiveness on all devices. So the whole technical SEO part that I'm not going to talk about today, but that's certainly very important to remember. You need to have your whole house in order, otherwise the best content in the world won't help you. So some other tips for smart content projects that I want to highlight. We just said it already, content actuality. It's very important to maintain your content assets, to regularly update them. And that doesn't mean you have to rewrite them from scratch every other month or every half year or so. Google also appreciates the concept of evergreen content, which means you add a new paragraph, a new aspect to an article that is already there, and show Google that you're working on that content. Show Google that you update it all the time. And obviously, do the same to your readers and promote these new aspects that you've added to your audience. In other words, you need to create reasons why your readers should come back to your site and consume more content. And at the same time, then show Google that you constantly and regularly work on your website. It's a very important aspect that search engines are looking at. Well, it's about lunchtime. I hope you all have grabbed some lunch already. And if you did, bon appetit. Eat content, though, has got nothing to do with the slice of pizza this lady is currently eating. But it's a very important topic I'd like to cover as well. So EAT content in Google's terms stands for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So you can see the questions to be answered on the slide. So expertise means how knowledgeable is the owner of that subject matter? How knowledgeable is the author of your website, of your text, about what he or she is writing? How authoritative is your website? How well known is it for the subject that you want to position it for? And obviously, how trustworthy is the website that you publish? So all of these are measures that Google is trying to quantify as well. And I think most of you that deal with content marketing have heard about EAT content before. And I jumped over an article the other day that is summarized here down there with the remark that EAT is not a ranking factor right now, and that this author doesn't even know if it will become one in the future. And I thought, really, is that really the case? And I think the answer is no. Well, in a way, it is no. There might not be the one ranking factor that measures EAT, but definitely there are several algorithmic factors in Google that work towards measuring these three elements: expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So there are articles, and I've linked one here where you can see more about this. But my recommendation certainly is not to write off EAT, but to make sure that you work towards these factors with each piece of content that you publish. Content relevancy is another important aspect, and I think when we're talking to many affiliates here, if I think about an affiliate, for instance, that is trying to link to Amazon or other big e-commerce websites, then the question is also what mix of articles, what mix of content do you need on your site? And every e-commerce shop or even e-commerce affiliate, for instance, that only has product descriptions on the site will not be successful when it comes to search engine results. At the same time, if you only had expert content, so not a lot of articles, but very long and very qualitative, then also you would not rank very high. It's always about the mix, and this mix is might even have to be multiplied by the number of languages you're operating in. And it always depends on knowing your readers' intentions, knowing your audience, having your personas right, and offer added value to your readers with the different content types that typically are there. So in an e-commerce world, product descriptions, category descriptions, landing pages, blogs, advisory articles, etc. Each of which obviously have a different quantity in articles that you need, but also the quality aspirations to each of them are different. Talking about personas, I think this is a very important element and a very important time investment that I recommend giving. I recommend each of you to take when looking at your content plans, because you need to know those people, those target personas that you want on your website, that you want to buy your products or your services, or that you want to convert. And so looking at personas asks a lot of questions. What interests do these people have? Where do they typically go for when they want to get information about your market? What is their interest in products and services that you offer? Also, what frustrates them when they think about these, and so on and so forth, down to demographic things like how old are they? Are they male or female, or is it mixed? Are they with high incomes or rather low incomes, and so on and so forth. So I think it's very important to look at that and also to spend some time and money to find out. At TextBroker, we did a similar thing and invested quite some money into asking our customers, into doing surveys and finding out as much as we could about these kinds of questions. And so in our project is a few years gone now, where we did this. It took about half a year to complete it, and this was our homepage, how it looked before we did our persona survey. Once you have all this data, you can also look into look and feel of your website. So not just the content part of it, but also many other aspects of your website. So once we were done, we changed our homepage to look like this. And interestingly enough, and we laughed a lot about that, a few weeks later, there was a social post from this guy here who actually says, look, the TextBroker homepage looks like I do, more or less. And that was a very funny element, which kind of confirmed to us, at least with this guy, that we're on the right track. Unique content for unique target groups. I think that's another very important point. It's about, in a way, it's about the subjective part of your briefing. Think about the style and the tone in which you want to write your content. The easiest example to explain this is don't write formal content for young audiences, but also don't write youth language if your target personas are older people. So also this subjective part of a briefing is a factor of knowing who your audience is. Add non-text multimedia content elements to your website and almost to each article of your website. People like seeing videos, like seeing images. And also there, adapt that to the target groups that you have defined. Headlines, summaries, meta descriptions, so the whole formatting part I mentioned before is not only important because it is better readable for every one of us once we read an article on a website, but it's also important from a Google perspective. And needless to say, never ever copy content from other websites. This is a killer, and plagiarism is certainly not anything that will help. Okay, getting towards the end, international content, want to mention that as well. Many of you are acting internationally. So the rules for content are basically the same everywhere. Think about local keyword research in each country. Think about whether you want to translate content or create fresh content in the other languages. Always use local authors and editors when you do this, and also do it right or don't do it at all. If you only translate half of your website into another language, then your audience in that country will not appreciate that. No-goes are machine translation of original content without having an editorial review. So don't just let a machine translate and put it on your website. And as I said, don't just translate parts of your site. Do it right or don't do it at all. So in summary, looking back at the developments in the last 9-10 years, as I mentioned, in the Google world, they can now measure content quality. They can measure content relevancy and focus on the reader's intentions. Quality comes before quantity, and I talked about the EAT elements of content that are very important. In the text broker and our clients' worlds, this means they order more words per article, they pay higher rates per word. There's a trend to more and deeper outsourcing and more service, and they use more specialist writers instead of the one-size-fits-all from a big pool. Generally, everyone should consider formatting multimedia content, should look at target groups and personas, look at content actuality at the evergreen aspect that I mentioned. Make sure that websites are compatible with all customer devices or consumer devices. Advertising in the right channels where your audiences are, and internationalize the same way. That's it. Thank you very much for attending. Romana, back to you.
Jochen, thank you so much. Can you see me okay?
I cannot see you right now.
But you can hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Oh, that's strange. I think we're losing connection here. Well, I found that so incredibly interesting. It was just, there's so much to ask you because it was so dense. There was just so many interesting things that I never knew about before. First, do you mind if I jump into some questions?
Sure. Happy to answer any questions from you or the audience, anybody.
Wonderful. Okay. Having limited budgets for content, how would you prioritize to spend it for an affiliate business, for example?
Yeah, I think the best way to prioritize is to look at it from the search volumes, for instance. So look at your keywords, look at the search volume of these keywords, and then do the analysis I mentioned to determine what needs to be done and invested to bring your content up in search engines. So I would look at keyword volumes, I would look at relevancy of keywords, I would look at the targets that you have with your website, and then close the gaps that still exist against your competitors.
Perfect. And what are the biggest differences when it comes to content marketing between two different countries or multiple different countries?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. I think from the way search engines look at it, certainly between the European countries, there's not much difference. One country is a little further ahead in Google developments than the other, but it's not big of a difference. I think as languages are local and as languages are different, that is what you need to focus on the most. So to give you an example, even if you wanted to translate an article, I would always do it based on a local keyword research in the target country. And then you don't translate it, but you localize the article. So there might be a keyword that in a word-by-word translation from one to the other language is not actually the keyword that people look for. And so it's in these levels of details where I would I would be very careful, and I would look at it, and I would spend money to make sure you do it right.
Okay. And do you see any differences regarding content marketing for affiliates compared with operators, e-commerce shops?
Not really. If you think about it, I think each affiliate is competing for the best spots in Google search results against whoever, right? And that could be the operator, that could even be the e-commerce site that they are affiliating to. So in that sense, I would see this as competition, and I would make sure that that you try to beat them in search results wherever you can. So in that sense, there's no difference. There might be affiliate concepts out there as well where you want to work together with your partner to see that you might, go for different parts of the search market and not duplicate and compete against each other. But the mechanisms and the rules for content are the same for both, as are the rules in search engines to make sure you get visible and ranked.
Okay, that's so interesting. Can I ask you one more question? How do you find the keywords for what your content is going to be? And I know you were showing the different competitors and finding what your competitors are using as keywords, but how do you actually identify your keywords at the start?
Well, I think, if you are selling shoes or clothes on the internet, then finding the right keywords is pretty easy. You want to rank for ladies' shoes or men's shoes. You want to rank for different types of shoes. You want to, so the words that you would like to be found for, I don't think it's easy to it's difficult to determine them. But then you need from there to go into the tools and look at how competitive is such a keyword. How many people are searching for it each day, each month, each year, and also who are you competing with? And if I don't know, if you're a small shop and Amazon and eBay and all these big ones are in the top positions, it will be hard to rank for those. And then you need to dig deeper and look into what are maybe niche keywords or subparts of the keywords you chose before, where the competition isn't that high and where your chances of ranking high are bigger and shorter term than for the big ones. So in a way, starting it and finding out what do you want to rank for is not that difficult. The devil then is in the detail of looking into what exactly do you need to do and where are your chances to achieve good ranking results.
Yeah, it's all in that detail, isn't it? And knowing your competitors. Yeah, thank you so much. That was so interesting, Jochen. And I'll catch you soon. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in. And we'll be back at 2 p.m. for the affiliate marketing case study here at Stage 2.
Thank you, Romana. Thank you.
Thank you so much again.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
From day one, Crack Revenue's tagline has been, "Follow the whale." 10 years later, it's truer than ever. Unlike most CPA networks, we test all of our top offers using our designers, media buyers, and analysts to make sure the funnel is working and that the offer is more than profitable. Then we share the recipe with our affiliates. Simply put, Crack Revenue is made for affiliates by affiliates. It's the whole idea behind Follow the Whale. That way, everybody wins.